This is Tatooine Sons, the only fan podcast to name a canon Star Wars creature and to be endorsed by the writer and the director of The Last Jedi, Rian Johnson. Let's talk about heroes and villains today, gentlemen.
All right. It's not like that's not 90% of what we already talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. But we're going to look at it a little bit differently. We're going to look at modern day, heroes and villains, and we're going to see how they connect to ancient heroes and villages.
I'm sure there were some heroes from villages.
There are, but villains with it. And as I say that, I can't help but think about one of the greatest villains of all time, Darth Vader, and how we lost one of the most iconic voices and actors of all time. I saw Babylon Bee put out an article that says the voice of God will now be played by James Earl Jones going forward with it. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. Can't wait to do it. This is Tatooine Sons.
It's true. All of it.
What is the name of the porg on the Millennium Falcon?
Force is strong in my family.
What do you think his name is? It's a big moment.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Maybe Turbis?
Do or do not. There is no try.
Turbis? Pablo, if you're listening to this live stream, that porg's name is now Turbis. It's a good Star Wars name.
We're not done yet.
These guys recorded an awesome podcast called Tatooine Sons. Everybody was
Obviously, James Earl Jones has such an iconic voice. But that's not the voice that most people, when you
Morgan
say
Freeman.
You normally associate Morgan Freeman.
Well, probably because he played God.
Was it Evan Almighty?
Evan Almighty and Bruce Almighty. Bruce Almighty was first, wasn't it?
No, Bruce Almighty was second.
No, I think you're wrong.
Or is it Bruce?
Bruce is first.
Anyway,
Bruce is first.
I
Evan
watched
Almighty is
whichever one Jim Carrey was in, and it was
that's
fine.
That's Bruce Almighty. But anyway, talking about James Earl Jones here. What we obviously. We're Tatooine Sons. We're a Star Wars centric podcast for the most part. So it's easy to get talking about James Earl Jones from a Darth Vader perspective. I mean, I'm sitting here looking at my phone and my pop socket, and it's all Darth Vader stuff. I'm wearing a Darth Vader shirt, sort of.
He's on there.
Empire shirt. But outside of Star Wars, in your guys' opinion, what is the most, the greatest James Earl Jones moment outside of Star Wars?
I think Nate and I are going to have the same answer.
Yeah. Okay, so Nathan, you have to go first then.
I have to go first
because he thinks he knows your answer.
Definitely the scene where he's talking to Simba,
as Mufasa.
Which one specifically?
Oh, when he's
is it the remember moment?
Yeah. There's no doubt about it. That's for sure the moment.
Now, is that in the original movie?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was when oh yeah. It's when he shows up in the clouds and stuff. And he's talking to Simba. Yeah, that's a great scene. Just in general, just a fantastic scene. And yeah, it's only amplified by the fact that James just has the best voice for a heavenly godlike creature character. It was great. And then you back it up with Hans' score, and
we'll talk about that in a second too. For me though, I think the scene in Field of Dreams at the end of the movie when he's talking about the importance of baseball in that movie. I mean, baseball is awesome. People love baseball. But when you watch that movie, you believe that baseball is the most iconic, the most important thing that's ever happened because of the way he's communicating, baseball in that. And it's the culmination of this. That's for me. And the fact that my dad, I was homeschooling at the time. My dad was off work that day, and he's like, come on, we're not going to do school today. And he took me to like Chapel Hills Mall at 10:30 in the morning, and we watched this movie he had heard was pretty good called Field of Dreams.
That's funny.
And I'd never seen it, and it was just coming out, and we watched it, and it was just it's about a dad having a catch with his son and all of that. So that's
cool.
Speaking of Remember and Lion King and all of that, you guys got to have I'll let you go. You tell everybody what you guys did a couple weekends ago.
Nate?
No, I was.
This is your deal, bro.
Come on, you tell me.
Come on.
We were able to go to Hans Zimmer Live in Duluth, Georgia.
The kickoff show for the tour.
Kickoff show, and I'm glad we did because Hans is having to cancel a couple of shows
No way,
due to
I hadn't
health
heard
concerns.
this. What happened?
So
For his own health?
just his own health concerns, health professionals. He just got a little sick. So
they're doing a show a night almost and going all over the country.
Every other night, it feels like they're doing a show. So
yeah,
they canceled the Baltimore one, which is sad.
That is sad.
But he was able to do Madison Square Garden, which is huge.
And it's kind of hard to back out of Madison Square.
Yeah,
that's true.
That one's sold out as well. So
what was your favorite moment? I'll start with you, Sam. Favorite moment in that concert, the Hans Zimmer experience.
I don't know. There were a few moments. One moment that, well, I don't want to step on Nate's moment. One moment that I thought was really cool though is it was during the Lion King suite. They had I don't remember his name, but they brought the guy out who did all of the singing for like the Circle of Life and all that vocalist. He was out and he was singing, those He Lives in You and Circle of Life, all that stuff. And then afterwards, Hans was talking, and there had been this girl who was up on stage. She'd been singing the whole concert, and she was singing with this guy during this suite as well. And he's like, well, what's crazy is she wasn't even born when I had this guy writing the music for Lion King, and now she's here singing with her dad. And so that was his daughter was able to sing that music with him on stage, which was pretty neat.
That's awesome. What about you, Nate?
Yeah, I thought the moment at the end of the Gladiator suite, when we were finishing up there, Lisa Gerard, the original vocalist for the original score for Gladiator, was doing her moment, which was also like a 10-minute moment. It was long, sweet. But she was singing, and she's an insane vocalist.
Well,
I don't know how she does it, but
yeah, I mean, one thing that I had listened to the live recording or the recording of the live album, and every time the Gladiator suite came on, I thought it was multiple people singing at the different ranges. And then that night I realized it was just one chick who has like the range of the entire keyboard on a piano almost.
Yeah, it's crazy. She was great, but she finished up, and Hans was saying that she usually runs off stage pretty quick, but the entire place gave a few minutes standing ovation for her, and she stayed there, and she was crying, and Hans
awesome.
had a big speech about her, and it was just, you could tell it was a really cool moment for her, and it was cool to be a part of that, because that's not something that happens every show for sure. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I love it that you guys got to do this, but I guess we should start the show. So welcome to Tatooine Sons, a pop culture podcast. We believe that pop culture is the mythology of this generation, that there is a story. It is written on our souls, and that these myths speak to that story. And that is why we're going to look a bit more closely at the connections between pop culture and mythology this week, beginning with heroes and villains as archetypes of these mythological characters and how they've evolved over time with it. So when you think, we were talking about this and kind of in prep before we started recording tonight, and there's we talk about, we're going to talk a lot about Superman, of course, we're going to talk a lot about Batman, but like Wonder Woman is probably the most direct like carryover from that based on
the Amazons were formed by Odin. So yeah,
I thought it was Zeus.
I think it's Zeus.
I think it's Zeus because they're Greek mythology.
Okay, so it's Zeus. But yeah, that's how it goes. So
yeah, we're gonna have some fun. We're gonna have some talking about that.
Now, of course, we can't overlook discussing the first half of season 2 of Rings of Power. We can't just gloss over that. Okay,
for sure.
We've yet to be able to watch it. Like, did we watch it on Thursday night this week?
No,
we didn't even get to watch it. We have not watched it on the day it's released yet.
Nope,
and
we're not going to this week.
And we won't be able to even watch Penguin then when it releases. Yeah. But speaking of Penguin, there are a few really interesting new comics releasing on Wednesday. But the most exciting is the continuation, or I guess final finale of the Long Halloween storyline and arc that was never released. It was a concept by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, but Tim Sale sadly passed away a couple years ago. But they're reprinting it and then carrying on the final arc,
finishing it out.
Finishing out.
Had they finished the story before, or did they have to?
So they kind of
tie it in?
They had a few. They had Long Halloween, Dark Victory. They had a couple other spin-offs. They had Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale did a one-off special after it a couple years ago. But this is going to be a full series. I think it's about 12 issues.
That's amazing. Had they already started writing this and then he passed?
They started writing it a little bit while ago. And the issue that's coming out, issue 0 that's coming out this week, was the issue that they completed, but didn't actually fully finish artwork and everything wise. So they reprinted it and are putting it back on the shelves. I can't wait to learn a little bit more about it.
Yeah. But enough talking about what we're talking about. Let's talk about what we're talking about.
Be on your guard. There are older and fouler things than orcs in the deep places of the world.
All right, then, keep your secrets.
You're coming to us. Is as the footsteps of doom.
There are many magic rings in this world, Bilbo Baggins, and none of them should be used lightly.
Sir Ian McKellen might be returning for new Lord of the Rings films.
I think there's new rumors for about these.
Well, they've done that one. I've seen what else? Who else has talked about? Orlando Bloom has said he wants to come back.
Yeah, but then he said that he would talk to Andy Serkis, and Orlando Bloom said that like he should just do like AI or something. I don't know. It's crazy. You hear new rumors about these unknown Lord of the Rings movies like every day.
Yeah.
Just because nobody really knows what's going on, because the next Lord of the Rings film is an anime. You really can't guess what's going to happen with the next one.
Well, then it's set, hundreds of years, I guess.
Right.
Before.
So you never really know. And the last Lord of the Rings game we got went down so great that you can really trust the IP right now with anything. Mm-hmm. So
the new ones though is like the Hunt for Gollum or something, isn't it?
Yes.
Is it taking place like in the same timeline as?
I'm wondering if it's taking place.
It's in between The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. What the game tried to fill in, the Gollum game tried to fill in.
We don't talk about that.
Wow. What a game. But
one of the games of all time.
Yeah. It is a game, if you can even call it that.
Anyway, let's talk about some Rings of Power though. We're how many episodes in are we now?
4, we finished 5. There's only 3 more left, and we haven't talked about it on this thing yet.
Yeah. So then
3 more left. That's crazy.
Oh,
that's
geez,
sad.
That was quick.
Well, they dropped 3 episodes at the beginning.
Yeah, so. You can't do that to me. But what has surprised you the most about the first 5 episodes of season 2 of Rings of Power? Nate, what has surprised you?
How streamlined it is. It's and not saying it's moving fast. It feels like we have more focus this season than the first one. Not that I had a problem with the first season at all. Loved the first season, but I think this one we just feel like we have an end goal. I feel like we're understanding this story through Sauron's eyes, Anatar's eyes, more than anybody else's. And I feel like, not that it's saying that any of the other plots are bad, but it feels like the Anatar, Celebrimbor, Galadriel, Elrond, Durin plotline is the main one in this season. And the Stranger is plot B, which was a struggle. One of the struggles I had with the first season, where it felt like we had plot A, plot B, plot C, plot D, plot so on, so on. Like,
we still have that to some extent.
We do, but it feels like they're all at this point trying to converge now, because in the first season you had Elrond and Durin, and then Durin had his own stuff and Elrond had his own stuff. And then you had the Stranger and Nori, and then you had Galadriel, and then you had, kind of Celebrimbor doing his own stuff too. So you had a lot of these things that didn't feel like they were really trying to fit together. But this season, I mean, Galadriel, Elrond, Durin, Celebrimbor, Anatar are all pretty much, and same with the Elven Kingdom, are all pretty much having the same goal right now. And then you just have the Stranger doing his own thing, trying to find his staff, which will eventually connect. And it is even connecting, because last time we saw the Stranger with Tom Bombadil, him saying that, you're going to have to defeat Sauron, you're going to have to defeat the Dark Wizard, all that stuff. So we know that they're going to converge. But right now, it surprised me how focused we are, I guess is a better word.
Dad?
I would say that I'm surprised that before we got halfway through the season, and we already had the rings for the dwarves.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that.
That I thought that the entire season was going to play out the dwarf rings. Next season was going to be the rings for men. We're sort of well into the men's stuff storyline.
Yeah.
So the men's rings. Yeah. So
yeah. I found that interesting too. I think that was kind of the thing that surprised me the most. What has surprised me though is how central they're making the Annatar storyline to this, which makes sense. I mean, of these characters and of these plot lines that continues into the main story of Lord of the Rings, that's the one, like the ring storyline. So I've appreciated how they've been doing that. But another, let's you were talking about plot A and B and C or whatever. Let's talk about one of those side plots though, is Galadriel and Elrond. They've sort of had like different feelings about the rings and whether or not the elves should be able to use them or not, or if they're safe. Elrond is obviously convinced that they're a tool for Sauron to use to control the elves, while Galadriel thinks that they can help Elvenkind. Obviously, they have at this point. They've saved them. They don't have to go back to Valinor. But I mean, this is sort of a weird, loaded question because we know kind of the end of the story. But who do you think is right and why? Dad, I want you to go first.
I think it's interesting what they did in the last episode, where they seemed to suggest, especially, and I will talk about another plot line. Obviously, what's Sauron's alias in this?
Annatar. It's like Annatar, yeah.
Annatar.
That's too many N's, but sure.
Annatar. Like Bananatar? No. Yeah, okay.
Sure.
So Sauron and Celebrimbor, they're central, it seems like, to everything that's going on in this entire series.
Right.
So in season with it. And what is interesting is they had this conversation in the last episode that seemed to suggest that the reason that the rings that the elves have are not they're able to control them, and they're able to control the power within them, is because they were actually forged by Celebrimbor.
Sauron didn't touch them.
Sauron didn't touch them, and he did touch the rings for the dwarves, and he's crafting the rings for men,
right? Which is probably why they turn into wraiths.
So we've seen the benefit that they brought. They rescued the elves. They can stay in Middle Earth. They restored them to Middle Earth.
They've given Galadriel visions.
They've given Gil-galad visions as well. With this, what's the name of the third guy that got the ring? That he was the older guy.
Círdan.
Yeah.
We've lost track of him lately.
Yeah, they kind of dropped that story.
He wasn't even important in the original movies either. So
he showed up only in the extended edition for 1 second, like one scene.
Frame.
Really, I did not know that.
Yeah, he was just there in the beginning when Galadriel's given the whole monologue, like 3 rings made for the
shave with the shell
for the Elven Kings. He just shows up in the back. Anyway,
I get the feeling that in my opinion, that Galadriel's right.
That they are a useful tool.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we see her.
I see that they're useful tools.
She has it in,
and that's a great deception by Sauron. Because if the first rings don't cause death, don't cause destruction, are not evil, it leads to, we should make more rings, which is exactly what's happened with this. And so that's a great deception on Sauron's part to not make those rings dangerous in any way, shape, or form. Right. And then we see them still wielding those rings in the Fellowship of the Ring and in the main trilogy.
Right.
There's still, Galadriel still has her ring and all of this kind of stuff. So I think that I think it makes sense.
Nate?
I'm going to stick with my boy.
Elrond.
Elrond's right here. Strictly because, and this comes to a difference in Galadriel's character. Not even, I'd say, a difference, just a revealing. She's against Sauron, and that was something that was established in the first season a lot. But she is very willing and weak to the thought of power and control. Not just control over death more than anything due to what happened to her brother. And so she sees that in the rings, obviously, and fair enough, they did save the elven race. So she's blinded to the fact that Sauron was the one that gave these ideas for the rings. Elrond's been the most level-headed and is continuing to be the most level-headed about this and is thinking through like, hey, y'all, like the dude that's like almost evil incarnate told us to make these things, and I don't think that this is a real great idea. Maybe we should pump the brakes and like reconsider this. And then everybody's like, nah, we're chilling. These give us cool powers. So I mean, I believe Elrond in this situation is right. I think that as we're seeing, Elrond is seeing the benefits of the rings, but I think that they definitely should have cooled their jets about it and try to figure out more about it instead of just, yep, these things work. Let's use them. Perfect stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah. Now, Sauron's survival over 1,000 years is kind of is explained in the opening of the first episode. I mean, that's how the series starts.
Yeah, how it starts.
What does this reveal about him? Kind of, especially as it relates to his motivations throughout the series.
He's a goop man.
Nate?
He's a goop man.
He's a goop man?
He's a goop. He's a symbiote. He honestly looked like a symbiote. But shows perseverance, also shows complete rage. But also he's very cunning, to be one person and then killed by Adar, waiting and growing to be able to basically enact revenge on Adar and finally realize his full vision of controlling all of Middle Earth, just by doing what he does, being a complete evil jerk. I mean, it is explained within the first maybe 15 minutes of how he's not a good guy, how Halbrand isn't, how Sauron isn't, with the dude that offers him help throughout the entire opening sequence, the man, I don't know if we ever got a name, but on the boat when, you know, it starts to sink and he calls out to Halbrand for help, and Halbrand just goes and grabs the signet and then just swims away. That was pretty Sauron-esque. I thought that it was a really good explanation of how he got there.
Yeah. It reminds me a lot of Maul.
Yeah, that's pretty similar.
Maul's anger, his hatred, his lust for revenge, we know it in the Clone Wars causes him to survive unnaturally. And that's what's going on with Sauron. I think that we get that element of him wanting to, like you said, enact revenge against Adar with this. But I think that it's more than just revenge. I think that he had within his grasp in the opening of this season, we see this. He had within his grasp to be the most powerful being on the entire earth. And he was right there, and he allowed his own arrogance to make him vulnerable to those that were closest to him. And his desire to survive is more than just get to revenge against Adar. It's, I'm going to get that power back and I'm never going to let it loose again. And
isn't he a prophet or a disciple of Morgoth?
Yeah,
right.
Sauron,
and so Morgoth has been destroyed at the.
So he's trying to resurrect Morgoth. Right?
No, he's trying to replace Morgoth.
To fully realize Morgoth.
And to actually go beyond Morgoth.
Goal?
Right?
Okay.
It's there's some Star Wars stuff, like the master apprentice thing where the apprentice thinks he can overtake the master with that. There's that. And I think that that's what's going on. He's like, he had right there within his grasp this unlimited power Sidious moment, and he let it slip because he was ignorant to what was going on even in his own circle with that. So.
Yeah. Now, all three of us kind of really disliked Dad Durin at the end of season 1. We were not happy with that. But now as we were mentioning, we're surprised we've seen this already. He has his ring, and I don't think he's given them to the other dwarf.
Giving them.
He's like getting ready to give them.
He wants like half their revenue or something crazy. Yeah, something like that. So we're watching him in that process. So are we seeing him become more of what we had hints of throughout the first season?
I don't know if we have hints of him being this like power hungry, power thirsty.
No, and I think that's the thing, because even during the fourth was like, he's never been like this. He was never greedy or selfish in his rule. He always cared for his people. This is unlike my father, is what he was talking about.
It was a really, really powerful moment when he first starts sensing the light. Using the ring, and like demands this like load bearing wall, this foundational wall be opened up. And it's interesting. I think the other thing is what's Durin the Fourth's wife? What's her name? Disa. It's funny to see how Disa pushes for Durin to get his father to take the rings, to do this, to partner with Elrond and the elves and all this process. And then the moment that she sees the result of what's happening in Durin the Third, you see immediately her regret in this. And I sensed there was, especially early on in some early episodes in this season, there's a love that Disa has for Durin the Third. She loves Durin the Third, her father-in-law. Yeah. And she's broken up as to what he's becoming at this point.
That's for sure. And it's just shown how much the ring can corrupt somebody. And we saw that in like Two Towers and Return of the King with Frodo, and how easily he was okay with betraying Sam and just leaving him due to Gollum, because Gollum's a jerk. We don't like that scene. But it just shows what the rings can do. And it's difficult for people to really be okay with all of the other rings doing what the One Ring feels like it does. I know that somewhere in the books it might have said that that Sauron wasn't able to corrupt any of the other rings minus the One Ring. I feel like they're trying to take some liberties with that in this, which is fine. I think it works better. I think that it enhances the work rather than replaces it. It's it's an adaptation. And I think that a lot of people really need to pick up on the fact that Amazon does not have the rights to the Silmarillion. Amazon does not have the rights to anything but The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and its appendices. That's it. It doesn't have the rights to anything that was described in anything else. So everything it's adapting is from those books. And again, it's adapting. So it's not going to be a shot-for-shot remake. And anybody that has an issue that it's not a shot-for-shot remake should also have issues with the movies and The Hobbit and the Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor games.
The Hobbit. The Hobbit had people had a lot of issues.
Understandable, but they don't have as many issues as Rings of Power has. And so seeing them change up a couple of things to increase emotional weight and character development and leading it to a story that ultimately feels like we have a better payoff for Lord of the Rings is not a problem. So changing that to make Durin the Third have such a different demeanor due to Sauron corrupting the rings as he was crafting them, it's fine. I think that it works, and it is increasing what we have coming up in this season. I know we're going to have a battle for Eregion, and I know that Elrond's going to lead that charge, and most likely with Durin the Fourth. So that's really going to increase how Durin the Third handles that, and then leading into, the Mines of Moria eventually closing down, the civilization gone, the king dead, all of that we see, it's going to enhance it. So I think what they're doing right now is just fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so another thing that's pretty important is everything on Numenor is kind of falling apart, at least like jurisdictionally. The queen has been dethroned in a coup, and now Elendil has been stripped of his rank. Also, oh Lord, why am I forgetting his name?
Whose name?
his son,
Isildur.
Thank you. He's still stuck
He's not
on Middle
an
Earth.
important character in Lord of the Rings.
Not at all. No. He's still stuck on Middle Earth. Like, everything's a mess.
Well, they all think
now.
he's dead.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, they think.
And now that other guy, I don't remember his name.
Isildur's friend.
Yeah, he got stabbed. I hate that
other dude.
And
Isildur's sister, she's a jerk.
It's like the hearts of men are really, really corrupt in that.
I mean, they're showing us the downfall of. Well, okay. I mean, the question I was going to ask is, where is the storyline headed? But I think we all know where it's going right now.
I have theories.
Well, I'm curious about how it's going to head with it. Elendil, is that who it is?
Elendil, the captain.
I'm wondering how it's gonna play out, because doesn't he have to become king, or is it Isildur, or do we not know, because this is all
he has to become king.
Well,
and then he's killed in battle. Isildur takes up his sword and cuts the One Ring off of Sauron's hand.
Yeah, at that point though, during the prophecy, Numenor already fell, correct?
Yeah.
So the kingdoms of men split into Middle Earth.
Right. Yeah, they're on Middle Earth at that point. That's why they're in that battle.
So Elendil has to become the king of Gondor, correct?
I don't remember if Gondor's been founded at that point yet.
Well, it doesn't have to be for Elendil's line and Isildur's line to be Aragorn.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
What I think right now is we know that there's this thing, the fall of Numenor. We know that exists in the books. We know that it exists as the Numenor sinks, the island sinks. And I think what we're trying to figure out is the sea. They've been so adamant in talking about the sea as this kind of spiritual,
the visions in the
all of that as being another character, another spiritual character for Numenor. And I think that due to the turmoil, which obviously hasn't been seen in Numenor before this time, at least not to the extent that they're having right now, the king is dead. The queen is kind of shunned at this point, and a corrupt politician is now leading the island. The turmoil is crazy right now. And so I think that due to the Palantir showing the queen, that the sinking of Numenor and all of that, but now it's disappeared, and Elendil is leaving, and it seems like he has a mission to probably go, at this point, that's suggesting finding Gondor and leading that kingdom. I think that we're going to be seeing the sinking of Numenor maybe by the end of this season.
Wow, that'd be crazy.
Mid next season, maybe, because we do have to get Gondor established in these next 3 seasons before we end season 5 with the end of the prophecy in the One Ring. So yeah, I think that where we're heading with this is the fall of Numenor, and that's what they're at least suggesting right now.
Yeah. And then we gotten very little of the Harfoots and the Stranger in this series, but what do you think is being set up for the last 3 episodes of the season, Dad?
I think that they've relegated Gandalf, the Stranger, and the Hobbits, the Harfoots, to a secondary storyline that's just going to basically, I don't know. That's a storyline that I'm not tracking with as well, because you've got the Dark Wizard, but I don't really understand the Dark Wizard.
I don't either.
You've got, everything that's happening in what's the land that they're in? The name of the Rune. With that, you've got Tom Bombadil, which I loved the one episode we had with Tom Bombadil. I thought that was fantastic, but I just don't understand where they're going with that plot line yet.
I believe that due to what the Stores said, we're going to be getting at the end of this season.
Oh, are those the Storvers?
Stores. They're called Stores.
I thought they were called
Stoor. Stores.
Okay.
Other versions of hobbits.
They were hobbits.
Halflings.
They're hobbits.
We're going to be getting, by the end of this season, I feel like we're going to be setting up Gandalf. He's going to get his staff. He's going to learn. He's going to defeat whatever the Dark Wizard is, who then wanted to gain power and bring Sauron back. Another disciple of Sauron, maybe becoming the Witch King or the Mouth of Sauron. could see that happening. But I think by the end of this, we're going to get a fight between Gandalf and the Dark Wizard with his staff. And then
I'd be good with that.
The Harfoots and Gandalf searching for that land that whatever that guy's name was looking for, which is the Shire.
Yeah.
And they're going to be looking for that and finding the place for the stewards, the Harfoots, and all of the halflings to finally reside in, growing
no longer
more,
having to be journeying.
Exactly. And then not having to go on adventures, not wanting to go on adventures, leading that to the end of the series. So that's where I believe we're going with this storyline. For the season being, it's going to be Gandalf revealed, him finding his name, him finding his staff, and defeating the Dark Wizard, for now at least. So
yeah, I love it.
And then last off, they've been doing some interesting stuff with Celebrimbor's character in this season. What do y'all think about that, Nate?
I like how conflicted he is. He's a man of true creation and really wants to create something. His heart is in the right place. There's no doubt about that. But he is being deceived by Anatar, by Sauron, so well. And that leads more into what we see later on with Sauron and the One Ring and Celebrimbor, and how it really feels like Celebrimbor he feels trapped in the situation he's in right now.
I was thinking.
He put himself in a situation he knows he can't get out of, so he needs to dive deeper to try and fix what he has created, what he's begun, and he knows that what he's begun could ruin Middle Earth if not handled correctly, so he feels like he needs to control everything. And it's going to be an interesting way to have him create the One Ring eventually.
In the lore, does Celebrimbor actually craft the One Ring?
No.
Sauron does.
No.
It's Sauron that does?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it just feels like I could see Celebrimbor being manipulated, being twisted to where he doesn't even know that the Sauron is the one that's causing him to make that, but he makes the One Ring as his attempt to try to defeat Sauron. But it actually, I mean, that's what I could see. That's where it feels like it could go, because that's how well Sauron is manipulated and trapped Celebrimbor. I mean, that last episode, Celebrimbor was
broken,
was phenomenal. That was a phenomenal episode for him.
If you see a random man walk into a giant fire and then give you visions of an elf god, basically, I'd kind of buy that too. So
yeah. Well, it's pretty exciting to see that the fan reaction for this season has been much more positive than season 1. And it was revealed that last week that season 3 is already in motion, and Amazon has reaffirmed their commitment to completing the original 5-season plan.
I love it.
Yep.
Yes.
It's very good. Good segment.
Thank you.
Yeah, good job.
Thank you.
It was fun. I was good talking.
Yes.
Rings of Power, finally.
Lord of the Rings.
And we'll be talking more in December, for sure. But it's been several weeks since we've been able to make our way to Pensacola, sadly, to pick up our latest comics. But there's one I'm going to be sure to head down there to get this week. Also, we have Transformers 1. So we're going to head down there for that, too. But we will talk about that and what we've been reading next.
Have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight?
Yeah, I can fly.
I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way.
The people in this room, which one is A, wearing a spangly outfit, and B, not of use?
There's only one God, man. And I'm pretty sure he doesn't dress like that.
Batman has no limits.
I feel like at this point,
because they gave it a 5. They gave
the Penguin a 5
when they had already given She-Hulk a 9.
And they also gave Transformers 1 a 5.
And they gave Transformers 1 a 9?
A 5. And people are saying it's the best Transformers movie yet. So
I think they're just trolling us.
I
just think they're stupid.
I also feel like they just weren't paid enough to give a good review. Genuinely, it feels a little suspicious that they give really high reviews to some things that I'm like, Sorry, what? I don't
somebody
get where
slipped
it's coming
him a
from.
50.
Yeah, somebody slipped him
seriously.
a 50, but who knows? Definitely excited for The Penguin coming out Thursday at 9 on HBO, and then next day on Max.
Is it the next day?
I think it's next day on Max.
Cool.
Or like right after it finishes or something. I'm not sure if it's a 2-episode premiere or not this week, but speaking of comic books and characters, releasing comic books this Wednesday, there are, of course, I think I saw that there were like 340 comics from any type of publisher coming out this week. So this is definitely not every single comic, because we'd be here for hours. But Batman, Superman, World's Finest issue 31's coming out. Superman issue 18. X-Men issue 4 and Darth Vader issue 50.
I think that's ironic that Darth Vader 50 comes out this week.
Yeah.
Darth Vader 50 is coming out. So it's going to be a big...
It's by Charles Soule, I think.
I think so. It's going to be the big 50th
That's cool
issue, which is always a big landmark. And then Batman The Long Halloween, The Last Halloween, issue 0.
Issue 0?
Issue 0. This is the prologue to the new series, Batman The Long Halloween, The Last Halloween, that's coming out, I think, starting at the end of this month. But it is going to be a kind of... It's going to be detailing a storyline set after, I'm pretty sure, Dark Victory and some of the other one-offs that they've had coming up here. I'm not sure. I got the last special, but I don't remember what the last special really was, because it was like 2 years ago that I got it.
So it's been a while since
they've done anything about it. But The Long Halloween, The Last Halloween, at least the details of the main series, not the prologue, is Gotham City learns to fear Halloween once more as a terrible event threatens to destroy Jim Gordon's life and puts Batman and Robin's teamwork to the test more than ever before. In a city of liars, mass vigilantes, and criminals, can anyone be trusted?
Interesting.
So it feels like it's going back
to... That said absolutely nothing.
No, that's just a usual, another normal Batman storyline. But the prologue for issue 0 is a pretty fun one. It's the new edition of the final collaboration between Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, the prelude to Batman The Long Halloween, The Last Halloween. You thought you knew the whole story of Batman The Long Halloween. You were wrong. Reprinting the final collaboration between legendary creators Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, this special uncovers a deadly mystery that could destroy Batman, Commissioner Gordon, Two-Face, and, well... That would be telling, wouldn't it? Don't miss out on this special reprint of the prelude to The Last Halloween. So
was this already been released at one point?
I think at one point it might have been. Sure, I missed it because it's been busy. But this is a reprint that I think leads straight into
the
issue
new
1.
Series. That's why it's an issue 0.
Series. And they got an artist that does Tim Sale homework, artwork for what's coming up here. So... It's going to be an awesome series. I can't wait to be able to read it, be able to dive back into the Long Halloween universe, especially...
Is The Long Halloween like considered one of the best of the storylines of Batman?
Yeah, it might be one of the most iconic. And you got Death in the Family and Killing Joke and all those things. Court of Owls. But I think Long Halloween probably is the most iconic. Just artwork wise, it's unique. And
does that play into the Penguin storyline some?
It doesn't play into Penguin much, but it looks like they may be going the direction of trying to loosely tie into it, with, of course, the Batman taking place around Halloween, and then the Penguin taking place in the weeks leading up to after Halloween to Christmas time. I think
because they announced that Batman 2 is taking place around Christmas
during the winter, which is going to be awesome. It's going to be.
We get Mr. Freeze.
Wondering if that's what they're trying to go with it, Mr. Freeze, and then most likely the rumors are right now that we go through that. There's going to be another spin-off series, most likely between.
I heard that,
and then probably the final of the trilogy will be the Court of Owls, since they're wanting to do a criminal kind of underground vibe to this trilogy. So yes, the Long Halloween will tie into because of holidays and everything going on with that, but. I think that
Very cool.
We're going to be getting a lot of stuff. But, Dad, I haven't been able to read anything comics-wise.
Sam, you read comics?
No.
He hasn't, because he hasn't gotten any new ones either.
I'm going to revoke your guys' nerd cards.
Well, I can't drive to Fountain Pensacola for no reason at the time. But, Dad, have you been reading anything currently?
I'm still on the Daredevil stuff.
What issue are you on?
I don't remember which issue. I mean, I finished one arc.
Have you gotten to the prison arc?
He's not in prison.
Okay.
he basically was, he's in prison and Elektra just showed up and was explaining to him why she was doing it. There's some really weird stuff, like she's got a thing for Matt, or she knows it's Matt, and we found that out.
Yeah.
In this, I need help.
What do you need help with? It's been a long time.
There's one character I have no idea where this person comes from.
Who are you talking about?
Can you figure it out?
I don't know.
Typhoid Mary.
Typhoid Mary is the wife of Kingpin after Vanessa dies, I'm pretty sure, in the comics.
So it's Kingpin that puts her in the Catholic as a nun.
Yeah.
I was
Typhoid
really
Mary
lost.
is probably one of the most mentally ill characters in all
you
of Marvel.
can tell that.
She's crazy. She's genuinely insane. She's also pretty awesome. She's a great character, and her and Kingpin together make for a very interesting couple. They did have a whole wedding arc at one point in the Daredevil comics back in the 90s, I think.
As Typhoid Mary?
Typhoid Mary and Kingpin. But yeah, it's a really interesting. She's a fun character. She also doesn't take place much left in the comic series. She's usually Elektra's villain at this point. She fights Elektra a lot, but you're about to get to one of my favorite moments in the Daredevil comic series. So
very cool. It's been a few days since,
and it'll be very timely. With what's coming up in the comic book world, especially in the movie comic book world with Venom coming out. So it's going to be very interesting to...
We were just talking about this.
We were just talking about this
yesterday, weren't we?
Yeah, we were. So it's going to be a ton of fun, and you're going to have questions, but I will be happy to answer them because it's an awesome moment.
Can't wait to check it.
But yeah, it's going to be a ton of fun for sure. And yeah, and as we've said before, the best storytelling, or at least some of it in pop culture today, is happening in comics and comic book movies and TV shows and games, if you can find any that aren't made by Square Enix or Avengers. But as Dad, when you take the time to really get into arcs that you're sure to get hooked on, it's amazing. But so take some time to stop by your local comic book store and pick up a few issues to see for yourself.
Even if you have to drive almost an hour to get to it.
Yeah.
Which we will.
We will.
This week.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Cool. Good job.
Thank you.
Good job, Nate.
You're welcome. Y'all ready to talk about superheroes and villains and mythology and all that fun stuff?
Yeah.
Hokey religions and ancient weapons are no match for a good blaster at your side, kid.
Rebellions are built on hope.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force.
If you live long enough, you see the same eyes in different people.
I'll start with you, Nate. Why do you think that Darth Vader is such an iconic villain?
I think that it's the fact that he has no real face. And I think that when you start out, when you see Darth Vader, it's this scary mask. It's unnatural. It's inhuman, and it just feels kind of uncomfortable and intimidating. And I think that's where some of the most iconic villains come from. I mean, if you think about it through the horror standards of cinema, you have, Jason Voorhees with the hockey mask, and Michael Myers with the crazy mask.
William Shatner mask.
Yeah, with the William Shatner mask. And then you take it to even the alien, this crazy, creepy, weird looking creature that you just cannot place a finger on what you've seen it, but you're scared of it. So I think that's where Vader comes from too.
I think Vader's iconic because he's cool. I mean, everything he does.
He's got
cool,
the amazing deep sound.
He's just got an imposing figure. He
doesn't seem as imposing when you hear
David Prowse's
recitation of the lines.
Yeah,
the British.
It's probably good that he
it's
he got dumped
like
over.
a C-3PO approach towards Darth Vader. With it,
it's funny.
Well, let's talk a little bit about these heroes and villains and their what they're trying. As we look at modern superhero characters and such, how they sort of tie into ancient mythological figures, but then how those figures and those stories have had to evolve and change over time. I guess the first thing is, how do we have, when you think about these characters like Superman and Batman, the Holy Trinity of DC, right? Wonder Woman. How do they reflect archetypes from ancient mythology? What are specific ways?
I mean, I think one great example is Superman is very, very similar to Hercules in a lot of ways, right? they're both known for their feats of superhuman strength and these abilities. They are often both considered like gods in a way. And they embody this concept of a heroic savior, someone with these from the heavens with these unnatural abilities coming down to defend humanity from greater than they can handle threats. And another thing is that distinguishes these characters is their moral integrity, this unwavering sense of right. I mean, Superman's called the Boy Scout in comics and stuff, right? They both, no matter what personal trials or challenges occur, they both still try to do the right thing no matter what. But with this, they struggle with their identity as both powerful beings and humans, right? I mean, Clark Kent, he's got a 9-to-5 job at the Daily Planet, but he's also the defender of Earth. And then Hercules is trying to figure that out too, because he comes from Zeus, right, and Olympus, but he also just feels like he's a regular old farm boy. So they're very, very similar characters.
But he can go the distance.
He can go the distance.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and just like that, Batman also feels a lot like
nothing from Nate. He didn't like my go the distance joke.
No, it was maybe a little forced, but
maybe, maybe. But from that, Batman's a lot like Achilles in some ways. Both are complex characters driven by personal loss. Like Achilles with Patroclus, whatever, whoever.
Patty.
I'm not a Patty, his death, and then of course Batman's grief over his parents' murders, and both seek justice through their personal sense of vengeance and right or wrong and morality through a lot of it. And of course Batman's Achilles heel is humanity.
I like what you did there. Achilles heel. Achilles.
Yeah, and I mean, even
just ignoring your
even
jokes.
when in the comics, when he's asked, by the Justice League and everything, that he has contingency plans for all of them, they're like, okay, so like, what's yours? And he's like, my parents. He's like, that's my weakness. My parents and what they did is my weakness. But he is a skilled fighter. He's a skilled detective, the greatest detective in the world. But he lacks superpowers like Superman and Wonder Woman, which makes his physical and emotional vulnerabilities critical to his story. He can be broken. He can be worn down and tired, and that makes for some of the greatest stories when he's having to go weeks on end with no sleep and just being broken down by these villains. It makes for some amazing things. And similarly, Achilles' strength is tempered by his vulnerability in his heel, which isn't quite the same thing. It's just, how do you strike a heel? It feels weird, but Greek mythology is strange. But the Dark Knight trilogy explores Batman's inner turmoil and his emotional scars left by his past, mirroring Achilles' eternal conflicts in all of Greek mythology as well. So it's very similar in Batman and Achilles, and it feels like something I wouldn't usually compare, but it makes sense when you really think about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then if we're gonna, I'll take a stab at Wonder Woman. I mean, that sounds weird.
Maybe be careful with
Wonder
that.
Woman.
Yeah.
She'd kick my butt. But she's got, obviously comes directly ties to Artemis.
Right.
With her character.
Well, I mean, there's a Amazonian called Artemis, so.
Right. Exactly. I mean, she's a protector. She's a warrior. She has a strong connection to nature like Artemis did, who's the goddess of the hunt and the wilderness. She's known, Artemis was known for her skills in battle, as she protected the natural world, just like Wonder Woman's, with her Amazonian roots, like you were talking about,
right?
Her respect for the different realms of nature with that. So, and then Artemis, was a champion of the weak, a champion of women, a champion of children, and you see that characteristic similarly come out with Wonder Woman. She embodies a lot of those same qualities, fighting for justice, fighting for equality. You see that. That's a central piece of what's going on in Wonder Woman in the film that came out was it almost a decade ago now?
Dang.
Not quite, but
2017. Yeah,
2017. She's got to stop Ares, which I know is a big shift from mythology, where Ares is actually in mythology a good
he's a good
figure.
Yeah.
In this, it's it's a twist in this, but she's bringing priests to the world. It kind of reflects what's going on with Artemis.
Isn't Ares the god of war?
Yeah,
so that was
absolutely
yeah.
So.
Yeah, but all three of the characters that we talked about, like their mythological counterparts, they face great moments of sacrifice, right? Obviously, Superman is constantly sacrificing his personal desires for the greater good, for the good of the earth. Batman obviously sacrifices his happiness for Gotham, because what character is more depressed than Batman? And then Wonder Woman, of course, sacrifices her isolation to protect humanity. She can't really get close with anyone in her line of work. Much like Hercules, Achilles, and Artemis are often depicted, sacrificing their own personal comforts for the greater good.
Yeah, and these superheroes, these godlike figures in DC, much like the mythological figures in Greek mythology, grapple with their extraordinary abilities and their connection to humanity. I mean, Superman's alien heritage, Wonder Woman's Amazonian origins, and Batman's limitations as a human all mirror the divine human tension seen in this ancient mythology and everything that we have going on through that.
Yeah.
In what ways do you feel like these heroes have evolved to align with the way that society's values have changed? And what does that say about our cultural priorities?
Yeah, I mean, this has happened with, multiple characters, but a really good example, because he's one of the oldest, if not like the oldest superhero, is Superman. Early versions of him introduced in the 1930s, just post World War I, getting into World War II. His characters, it was heavily influenced by American patriotism, especially during World War II, much like Captain America, except Captain America is a little more on the nose. But, but Superman was written to symbolize hope and justice for
justice in the American way.
Truth, justice, and the American way. That was his motto. And then up until recently, that was his tagline. That was his motto. But over time, Superman kind of evolved from being a purely American symbol to more of a global protector, right?
What's the saying now at the DC?
Truth, justice, and a better tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I think is better. Good. And I like that change for Superman. I mean,
but that was controversial.
It was,
and generationally, it was controversial.
Yeah,
it fits Superman. It fits who Superman is. I mean, Superman was never American. He was Kryptonian.
Well, he was a good old Kansas boy.
He was sent to Earth to protect its people. And it's not just America that he's supposed to protect. But in modern comics and film, Superman tackles global issues like climate change in some ones, immigration and human rights, showing how his character has adapted to reflect contemporary concerns like most heroes have. Comics are a way for people to
reflect and speak into modern things.
Yeah, exactly. It's a commentary.
And not as much of a controversial way, not as real of a way. But in Man of Steel, good movie, Superman struggles with his identity as both an alien and a protector of Earth, and even a person, a human, and having to deal with Zod coming back, being a Kryptonian and creating Krypton on Earth, or being a human protecting his people like his father Jor-El wanted, highlighting themes of belonging and the immigrant experience, which is very relevant to modern debates on immigration and diversity and everything that goes along with that. But yeah, even when you go to Batman in these ideas and concepts, you see that early iterations of Batman depicted him as a straightforward crime-fighting vigilante. Even some of them were cheesy, comic booky, pow, bop, just a normal dude. And if you're going with the original concept, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed,
right,
dude in a red shirt with weird wings and shorts, and God, it was bad. Thank you, Bill Finger, for coming in and helping out with that. But as society societal views on justice and morality became more nuanced, especially back in the 80s and the 90s. It changed Batman's character a lot, but it helped Batman evolve into a morally complex character, grappling with his own darkness, his own trauma, and the ethical implications of his actions and what he enacts on criminals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then one of the defining characteristics of Batman is his use of non-lethal force and his personal code against killing. That's been increasingly questioned and explored in modern stories and pushed to its limits, reflecting like societal concerns around justice and law enforcement and just general accountability.
Right. And I mean, even in The Dark Knight, Batman faces moral dilemmas in his battle against the Joker, asking difficult questions about the cost of justice and the blurred line between a hero and a vigilante, which is, of course, echoing real world debates about law enforcement and power. Mm-hmm. And we see this all the time. And it goes back to the original Batman movie, where it seems like Batman's completely fine with killing. And then it just continues into this more modern aspect of like, is that necessary for Batman? Is that necessary for all these characters?
Yeah. And then, an example of Wonder Woman's early character and how it's changed is, she was first created in the 1940s. And at this point, feminism, and things like that were on a heavy rise. And so she helped embody early feminist ideals representing like female empowerment and independence during a time, when the roles a woman could take on were very limited.
Right. And even in recent years, Wonder Woman's evolution has been even more about expanding her feminist identity to be more inclusive, representing not just women's empowerment, but also intersectional feminism, like embracing diversity in race, sexuality, and cultural backgrounds. But in the Wonder Woman film back in 2017, it reintroduced her as a strong and compassionate leader who fights for all humanity, transcending gender and representing a broader fight for justice, equality, and peace. And her character now reflects the more modern feminist movement than what we had back in the 40s and 50s, which is it's more inclusive and conscious of the society now. So
it's cool. Are there any modern villains potentially? Because we've been talking about heroes, right?
Yeah.
Who mirror these mythological antagonists, and how have their roles, their motivations adapted to fit today's narrative?
This might be a little bit of low hanging fruit here, but Loki. What? It's not like he's straight from mythology. But in
I'm
Norse,
surprised we didn't talk about Thor in the last part, but that's fine.
well, we were on a DC kick, but in Norse mythology, Loki, he's the god of mischief, of deceit. He's a trickster who just likes to cause chaos for the sake of chaos because it's entertaining. But he also plays a pretty important role in shaping events in Norse mythology, and in a lot of ways, he mirrors other cultures, mythology, and characters like Prometheus and Hermes, who kind of question the status quo and challenge authority. Now, in modern times, specifically the MCU, Loki, he's still got those trickster qualities, but he's evolved, especially in his series, into a much more complex character where his motivations are not just causing chaos for chaos sake, but more out of feelings of inadequacy, especially with like Odin, and rejection. He just wants a general desire for power. A pretty good example of this change in his character was in Thor Ragnarok, where his relationship with Thor, and his changing alliances throughout the movie show how he's a lot more morally gray than even how he started out with in like the MCU itself. Kind of aligning with the modern day narrative of complex characters who are both kind of antagonist and anti-hero. You're seeing those sort of characters pop up a lot more nowadays.
For sure. And another one is Thanos. Thanos closely mirrors Cronus, who is the Titan from Greek mythology who consumed his own children to prevent them from overthrowing him, representing the fear of loss and power and control. And we see this in the MCU. Thanos' motivation goes beyond power. He believes that wiping out half the universe is a necessary evil to solve it from overpopulation and all
better
of
than
that.
trying to please a girl.
No,
the death mindset was so much better.
So much better. But I mean, even in that aspect, I mean, Thanos sacrifices his own children a lot like Cronus. I mean, he sacrifices Gamora and then tortures Nebula, who's his real daughter, like genuinely his real daughter. So we see that comparison there too. But how Thanos behaves in all of this is he reflects modern themes of environmentalism and utilitarianism, showing that villains today often believe they're acting for the greater good. But in Infinity War, Thanos is portrayed not just as a tyrant or someone that's an evil bad guy, a jerk, a mean dude, but as a person who genuinely believes his actions will restore balance and peace, making his character more relatable and reflective of modern world dilemmas about sacrifice for the greater good. Even
until
though
the end of Endgame, when he's just like, I'm just pissed off.
He's like, man, y'all are stupid. I don't like this. But honestly, I think that the original aspect of Thanos in the comics is way more captivating for a villain than what we got in the MCU. But probably one of the most recognizable, if not the most recognizable villain of all time in comics. I mean, I can't think of one that would be more recognizable, is the Joker. And the Joker can be seen as a modern counterpart to figures like Eris, the Greek goddess of chaos, and even Hades, who governs the underworld and represents the darker, more unpredictable forces of nature and humanity, even though probably saying that Joker wouldn't like that because it would be disrespectful or something. I don't know. He just doesn't like being compared to people. But Joker's motivations have shifted from simple madness to a more nuanced reflection of issues in society, or we live in a society was a big thing that came from the Joker movie. Like mental illness and the breakdown of structures in society. But he is less a supernatural force and more of a representation of societal decay and inequality. But in the Joker movie back in 2019, Arthur Fleck's descent into madness is framed by systemic neglect and societal failure, and showing how modern villains can embody those issues and societal critique, making them more human and understandable than their mythological predecessors. Mm-hmm. But
yeah, and then another one, and I find this villain really interesting, is Killmonger from Black Panther. He mirrors mythological figures like Ares. We talked about him earlier, the Greek god of war. Ares kind of thrives on conflict and believes that violence is always the answer to everything. Killmonger, his motivations are rooted in like personal trauma and history and from his past, similar to mythological figures who kind of seek revenge after they feel that they're wronged. Much like Loki, actually, in Norse mythology. But in the modern interpretation of Killmonger, he's much more a reflection of the historical and cultural trauma. The Black Panther movie really does a great job discussing those topics. He's driven by the oppression of the black people, of black people, making him a sympathetic villain, who in the end is more of a product of the very system he's fighting against. His goal is to liberate the oppressed people through force, which is a morally complex motivation that it challenges you to kind of question the line between hero and villain in today's fight for justice. I mean, it's not like what he was doing was like his motivation was entirely bad.
Right.
Just he went about it the wrong way.
And another anti-hero we've seen kind of rise up, especially as an anti-hero in the recent years, is Venom. Venom reflects the ancient idea of the symbiote or possession. Yeah, that's similar to how mythological beings like demons or spirits could inhabit human bodies, like figures like the Furies or other mythological figures like the Wendigo or anything like that. But Venom,
the Furies.
Yeah. Venom represents the internal struggle between the good and evil. You see Eddie Brock, who, while broken and kind of a mess, a loser, he's still good. Mm-hmm. And then Venom, a creature created for darkness, created for evil, through evil. So those are very, very different characters, much like the duality in modern psychology. He's a villain who grapples with his own humanity, mirroring the current themes around identity and self-control and the consequences of power. But back in the movie, in Venom, back in 2018, Eddie Brock's transformation is framed as a struggle between his darker, more violent nature and rage and anger against people and his job and not being able to pay the bills and even the dude across the hall playing the guitar too loud and his desire to protect those that he cares about, like his girlfriend. I can't remember her name. I think she was in both of the movies too. I can't remember it at all, but reflecting the modern concerns about morality, self-control, and redemption. Finally, we'll see that redemption in The Last Dance coming out here in a couple months. So
yeah, it actually looks like it's really good. I'd never thought about Venom and the symbiote concept as being a parallel to like a demon possession.
Yeah. It's a weird way to look at it.
But it is similar with it. I think it's time we could throw in a little dad moment here.
I am your father.
So as we've kind of talked about through this, you've got these superheroes, you've got their mythological counterparts. And they teach us a lot of things. I mean, something as simple as the thrill of adventure or heroism and that type of thing. But they also are really designed, and they were originally built around the idea of teaching us how to navigate the complexities of right and wrong and justice and injustice and that type of thing. You've got Superman, he's got that unwavering sense of duty. You've got Batman, who's going to go after justice, no matter what, what's going on. Justice is the most important thing for him, and doing the right thing there. And you have Wonder Woman's fight for equality. It's not just a physical thing. It's also moral. Then you have these villains like you guys brought up with Loki and Killmonger, that show us that line between good and evil can be blurred. With it, it reflects a lot of the challenges that we face. These stories aren't really just tales of from the past, from the ancient world. They're reflections of who we are and who we hope to become and hope to be. In a perfect scenario, which really, when we're even in our most difficult moments, we can be challenged to rise above, to protect, and to fight for what's right. So. Very cool.
Good dad moment.
Good dad moment. Appreciate you guys. Anything else you guys want to talk about?
Anything else?
The Emmys were last night. As we're recording this, they were last night. That was a long 3.5 hours.
Holy crap.
It was long, but The Bear came away with 11 Emmys. Should have been 12. Don't know how you win Best Director and don't win Best Comedy Series. Not sure how that happened.
Comedy?
Yes, don't you get started on this. It is a comedy. Always will be a comedy because comedies are tragedies. But.
So, Sam, anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I gotta go and run the first session of our actual real Marvel RPG campaign.
So you've done your trial, like your
we did like a little test sessions. I did that warm up
before too. It's fun.
But now we're getting into the meat and potatoes. So I'm excited to get started. So
I got to get a bunch of work done in the next few days because I'm taking your mom to Disney.
Oh, well, okay, that's good. Yeah.
I think that's going to pretty much do it for this week. Thank you guys so much for listening. We're excited about that. If you have, we'd love to continue to have you tune in and share this with other people. I think that's going to pretty much do it for this week. Anything else?
May the force be with you.
May the force be with you.
May the force be with you always.
This party's over.
I like that Wookiee.
Don't get technical with me.